Welcome to History Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Bobby Knight, basketball coach known for trophies and tantrums, dies at 83. Global Affairs Canada ready for further crossings daily out of Gaza Strip. Britney Spears' memoir a million seller after just 1 week since its release. David Mitchell, weekly editor who exposed a corrupt cult, dies at 79. The troubling state of exile for Jews who live outside Israel. Bobby Knight, basketball coach known for trophies and tantrums, dies at 83. New York Times. Bobby Knight, the renowned and polarizing former college basketball coach, has died at the age of 83. Knight was known for his tempestuousness and hubris, as well as his brilliant coaching abilities. He coached at the United States Military Academy and Texas Tech University, but found fame at Indiana University. Knight raised the Indiana program to the national top tier while maintaining high academic standards and avoiding recruitment scandals. Global Affairs Canada ready for further crossings daily out of Gaza Strip. The Toronto Star. The Canadian government expects that Canadians in the war-torn Gaza Strip will continue to leave the region and cross into Egypt in the coming days. Global Affairs Canada has said that it is aware of reports that one Canadian citizen has already left Gaza with the help of a third party. The Canadian government has one of the largest contingents of nationals in Gaza and is therefore expecting further crossings in the following days. The government has called for all Canadians to be allowed out of Gaza and has condemned Hamas's terrorism. However, the government has also warned Canadians that it cannot guarantee their safety if they choose to make the trip to Egypt. The federal government organized evacuation flights for Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and eligible family members from Israel last month. It has also helped 65 citizens, permanent residents, and eligible family members leave the West Bank since the conflict began. Britney Spears' memoir a million seller after just 1 week since its release. Associated Press. Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me, has sold 1.1 million copies in its first week of release in the US. The sales figures include pre-orders, print sales, ebooks, and audiobooks. The book has been praised for its compelling account of her rise to fame and ongoing struggles, including her conservatorship. The audio edition of the book, read by Michelle Williams, has been highly acclaimed and is the fastest-selling audio release in the publisher's history. David Mitchell, weekly editor who exposed a corrupt cult, dies at 79. New York Times. David Mitchell, a muckraker whose tiny California newspaper challenged the violent drug rehabilitation cult Synanon and, as a result, became one of only a handful of weeklies to win a Pulitzer Prize, died on October 25 at his home in Point Reyes Station, California, in Marin County. He was 79. The troubling state of exile for Jews who live outside Israel. The Sydney Morning Herald. Michael Govenda's memoir, My Life as a Jew, reflects on his journey as a Jew and his changing attitudes towards Israel. He discusses his past, his views on post-Holocaust and contemporary Jewish political debates, and what he hopes to pass on to his children. The memoir also explores the difficulties of being a Jew, particularly outside of Israel, where one is always in a state of exile and subject to the threat of anti-Semitism. The author, like the reviewer, was raised in the Jewish Labor Bund and its youth movement, SKIF. However, the reviewer argues that the author's depiction of Jewish history as one of powerlessness and vulnerability is not accurate, as Jews have continually grappled with and reimagined what it means to be Jewish throughout history. The reviewer also criticizes the author's division of Jews into universalist and particularist categories, arguing that Jews are diverse and occupy different parts of the political, religious, and cultural spectrum. The reviewer hopes that the memoir will open up more conversations about Jewish identity and the future of Judaism. Arnold Diaz, who reported on New York's swindlers, dies at 74. New York Times. Arnold Diaz, an investigative reporter in New York City, has passed away at the age of 74. Diaz was known for his segments that exposed con artists, scammers, and others who ripped off consumers. His reports aimed not only to help victims but also to embarrass those responsible for their misconduct. Diaz spent over 20 years at WCBS, Channel 2, where he conducted his Shame on You investigations. He later moved to WNYW, Channel 5, and then to WPIX, Channel 11, with the segment being renamed Shame, Shame, Shame and What a Shame, respectively. Diaz retired last year and stated that his reports gave a voice to victims whose complaints were often ignored. Germany's president apologizes for killings in Tanzania under colonial rule. Al Jazeera. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier apologized for the colonial-era killings in Tanzania during Germany's rule and promised to raise awareness of the atrocities in his country. Tanzania suffered under German colonial rule and saw one of the region's deadliest uprisings from 1905 to 1907. Germany is now ready to begin a communal processing of the past and has pledged to work to find and return the skull of an executed colonial-era leader. This move is part of Germany's recent efforts to acknowledge and address its colonial-era atrocities in both Tanzania and Namibia. A 500-year-old Inca mummy in Peru now has a face. New York Times. A silicone bust of a young Inca girl who was sacrificed in a religious ritual more than 500 years ago has been revealed in Peru. The girl, known as Juanita or the Maiden of Amparo, was discovered by archaeologists in 1995 on the snowy Amparo volcano. The well-preserved remains of the girl were naturally mummified in the freezing environment and had been entombed in ice, allowing scientists to create the silicone bust. The model was created by a team of Polish and Peruvian scientists working with a Swedish archaeologist who specializes in facial reconstructions. Ontario expands Holocaust education in schools to combat rise in anti-Semitism. CBC. Ontario is expanding mandatory Holocaust education in grade 10 to include learning about contemporary impacts of rising anti-Semitism. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the expansion is intended to combat a rise in hate and promote fundamental Canadian values. The new curriculum will explicitly link the Holocaust to extreme political ideologies, including fascism, anti-Semitism in 1930s and 1940s Canada, and the contemporary impacts of rising anti-Semitism. The government is also providing funding to community organizations to provide resources on anti-Semitism and Holocaust learning. UK summit aims to tackle thorny issues around cutting-edge AI risks. The Toronto Star. Officials from 28 nations and the European Union have signed an agreement on the safe and responsible development of AI at a summit near London. The two-day event, hosted at Bletchley Park, focused on frontier AI, which refers to the latest and most powerful general-purpose systems that push the technology to its limits. The summit is part of an effort by British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to position the UK as a hub for computing innovation and initiate a global conversation on the safe development of AI. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris is due to give a speech on the Biden administration's approach to AI. And that's it for today's news. We've covered a wide range of topics today, from the passing of basketball coach Bobby Knight, to the Canadian government's efforts to help Canadians leave the Gaza Strip, to Britney Spears' memoir becoming a million seller in just 1 week. But let's not forget about the smaller stories that are just as important. We've also discussed the passing of investigative reporter Arnold Diaz, Germany's apology for colonial-era killings in Tanzania, the unveiling of a silicone bust of a 500-year-old Inca mummy, Ontario's expansion of Holocaust education in schools, and the UK summit on cutting-edge AI risks. Now, let's dive into some analysis. Bobby Knight was a legendary basketball coach, known for his success on the court as well as his fiery personality. His coaching abilities were unparalleled, but his tantrums and controversial behavior often overshadowed his achievements. Love him or hate him, there's no denying his impact on the sport. Moving on, the Canadian government's efforts to assist Canadians in leaving the Gaza Strip highlight the ongoing conflict in the region. It's a complex situation with no easy solutions, but the government is doing its best to ensure the safety of its citizens while condemning terrorism. And who could forget Britney Spears? Her memoir has taken the literary world by storm, selling over 1 million copies in just 1 week. It's a testament to her enduring popularity and the public's fascination with her life and struggles. Plus, the audio edition read by Michelle Williams is breaking records. On a more serious note, the passing of investigative reporter Arnold Diaz reminds us of the importance of journalism in holding those in power accountable. Diaz dedicated his career to exposing con artists and scammers, giving a voice to victims and shedding light on their misconduct. His work will not be forgotten. In international news, Germany's apology for colonial-era killings in Tanzania is a step towards acknowledging and addressing the atrocities committed during its colonial rule. It's part of a larger effort by Germany to confront its colonial past and work towards reconciliation. And finally, the unveiling of a silicone bust of a 500-year-old Inca mummy is a fascinating glimpse into the past. It's incredible what scientists can learn from ancient remains and how they can bring history to life. That's all for today's news analysis. I hope you've enjoyed our journey through these diverse and intriguing stories. Now, it's your turn. What are your thoughts on these topics? Do you have any questions? Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.